Welcome everyone to the Wednesday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Pete Dougherty. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers are just 4 days away from their NFC Championship game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who's counting? Are you excited? How are you feeling, everybody? We're going to want to hear from you in just a few moments. However, let's give you the quick rundown of our show today. We're going to hit on some Packers transaction news. We'll also take a look at some injury updates. Plus, we'll also look ahead to this upcoming weekend's NFC Championship game against the Bucs. Before we get into that, as always, you know the drill. We want to hear from you. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a comment down in the chat. Pete and I love hearing what's on your mind. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Former Green Bay Packers cornerback Tramon Williams, and he's a current free agent, by the way, he came on a visit to the Green Bay Packers today. The Packers are reportedly interested in signing him after Williams was cut from the Baltimore Ravens, where he had played several games. Most recently, he was playing against the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round. The Ravens lost. Williams is a free agent, and the Packers are interested in him. If Green Bay does ultimately sign him, how could they envision a role for Williams on the roster?
This has got a whiff of Jared Valliere, right? I could see him using him in the dime if they really, if they wanted to play two corners at the slot, they could put him in there, him and Shandon Sullivan. Williams has played safety for him a decent amount last year when they had injuries. So he would offer a lot of position versatility. I'm guessing it's more as a backup nickel corner. Josh Jackson isn't suiting up on game day because of special team stuff. And, maybe they even would want to play Tramon ahead of Will Redmond, who when they play dime, Redmond in some dime, he's a safety, and in some dime, he's a slot corner opposite Sullivan. Conceivably, they could use Tramon in place of him in either of those spots. The guy knows the defense. He was here. He played for Pettin in Cleveland. He was here with Pettin for 2 years, so there's nothing really to learn there. We're just kind of guessing here. I'm wondering the same thing. Did they just bring him in as a backup for these last two, if they have two games, or do they actually see getting him on the field on Sunday?
Not only does Williams have experience playing basically every position in the secondary, he also has experience as a punt return specialist. We'll see if the Packers are in fact interested in him enough to sign him. We'll keep you posted over on PackersNews.com, so make sure you're checking out all of our coverage over there. Let's take a look at today's practice. The Packers are extremely healthy heading into the NFC Championship game coming out of this past weekend's game against the Los Angeles Rams. Running back A.J. Dillons sustained a quad injury against the Rams that kept him out for the rest of the game. He left the game late in the fourth quarter, so not a whole lot more for them to throw him in there. However, he did practice today in a limited capacity. If Dillon is healthy enough to play this weekend, how will head coach Matt LaFleur try to get him involved in the run game?
So last week it was 9 snaps and 6 carries, and from what I remember, I think all 9 of those snaps, if not all 9, almost all 9, they had both him and Jones on the field, and they'd start up in the backfield together, and Jones would motion out. So I don't know if I would guess that would be the same package LaFleur would want to use him in this week and maybe have some new wrinkles off it that they didn't show. I guess the one thing I wonder is with how well the Buccaneers blitzed the Packers the first time they played, I would think the running back they have the least faith in is Dillon because of his limited playing time, all the time that he missed because of COVID. And so maybe that will cut into his snaps. On the other hand, they might want him out there to run at those inside linebackers and have him make him tackle a guy who's actually bigger than they are in the cold. So there's a lot of factors to consider there. And I'm sure all those decisions have been made by obviously they've been made by the coaching staff now, and they're practicing them in their game plan. And we'll find out Sunday just what they decided.
It's a good sign that Dillon was able to practice today, albeit in a limited capacity. However, we will continue to keep an eye on him as the week of practice continues regarding his availability this upcoming Sunday. Let's take a look ahead to this weekend's game against the Buccaneers. However, before we do that, I feel like we need to go back to Week 6 when the Packers went up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and lost 38-10. The past doesn't always necessarily dictate the future. No other team knows that better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They played against the New Orleans Saints twice in the regular season and lost both times. However, they beat the Saints in the divisional round to advance to this game. How much stock are the Packers putting into that Week 6 loss against the Buccaneers as they approach this weekend's game?
Yeah, 38-3 was what the Saints beat the Bucs by the second time they played just a few weeks ago. So generally inclined not to put much. I mean, you could point to last year and the Packers getting beat pretty soundly by San Francisco in the regular season and then just getting destroyed in the NFC Championship game and say, well, how can you say it doesn't matter? But the Packers are a much better team than they were last year. The Bucs are not as good as San Francisco was last season. So I don't think this is going to be a similar kind of game. Now, maybe something will prove out where there was some kind of matchup in that game where the Buccaneers have the personnel to do it and other teams don't, and they handle the Packers again. I don't think that's likely, but you never know. So I just think this will be a different game. I mean, Rodgers had 2 pick sixes in his career coming into that game, and he threw 1 pick six and another, which might as well have been because it was returned, I'm pretty sure, inside the 5. So the odds of that happening again are pretty slim. And that obviously had a huge effect on the outcome of that game.
Matt LaFleur admitted that in that Week 6 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Packers got away too much from the run game. The Packers ultimately only acquired 94 yards on the ground, which going up against the Buccaneers' #1 run defense isn't really that bad. However, if you look at some of the Packers' more recent successes on the ground, you know that they are capable of having a much better game. Against the Rams this past weekend, the Packers' rushing attack put up 188 yards total. How is LaFleur approaching the run game this time around going into the NFC title game?
I mean, he's going to stick with it longer, I'm sure. I don't know the numbers, first half numbers from that previous game. I'm going to rewatch that game tonight and I'll look at the stats. So I don't know what the Packers ran at halftime. All I remember was during the portion of the game when they needed to run it, they couldn't run it. And then they didn't run it. And with how well they've run, with the even run-pass split they had last week, I mean, that's ideal for what they're looking for. I mean, you got to think even if they get behind, they're going to stick early. They're going to stick with the run just to occupy, just for all the reasons that it makes the passing game so much better, and to make the Bucs play 60 minutes of run defense instead of in that game, I don't know, what they have to play 20 minutes, and the Packers then they got so far behind that they were in catch-up mode.
Let's head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions right now. Let us know how you're feeling. We want to hear from you. Not too late to get some of your thoughts in if you're still mulling them over. Let's start with Michael over on Facebook. Michael wants to know, who other than running back Aaron Jones and wide receiver Davante Adams will step up this week in the offense for the Packers? This past week, the Packers had a number of different contributors, both in the run and the passing game. If you look at the passing game specifically, Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan, both getting receptions. Tonyan, 4 receptions for 60 yards. Allen Lazard, 4 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon, as we've mentioned on the show already, contributing in the run game as well. Jamal Williams had 65 yards rushing on 12 carries. Who's most likely to step up in addition to Jones and Adams this upcoming weekend?
I mean, if you go by just what they've done this year, I'd go Tonyan probably next, Lazard after that, and then Valdez-Scantling. But St. Brown's getting a decent amount of playing time too. I think, after the guys you mentioned there, Jones and Adams, you never know for sure who it's going to be who might pick up the slack. Let's say they take Adams out of the game to some degree. Who's going to be the person who's making some plays? It could be anybody, and it might be by design, or it might just be by the way circumstances turn out. They might have a matchup they really like that they're planning on using. But Tonyan, pretty obvious. I think that Tonyan's their next best option, their next best playmaker. And you never know, maybe Valdez-Scantling, those deep shots, what's he lead the league in the catches for over 40 or over yards over the last 2 seasons? He catches a deep shot that changes the game. So, maybe it'll be him.
Valdes-Scantling was averaging roughly 20 yards per reception this season, this regular season, which led the league. Tunyon has become a favorite target of quarterback Aaron Rodgers. He tied the franchise record for tight ends receiving touchdowns this season as well. So 2 big targets there for Aaron Rodgers, and potentially will have a big game this upcoming weekend. Let's go over to Smumster over on Periscope. They want to know why the Packers signed defensive lineman Damon Snacks Harrison and then barely played him. Will that change on Sunday? If you look back to his snap counts this past week against the Rams, Snacks only played 3 snaps. The week before that, week 17 against the Chicago Bears, Snacks played more. He played roughly 12 snaps. Why didn't the Packers utilize him nearly as much, just going back to that first game that he played for the Packers?
I don't know. I thought he'd play at least as much because you knew the Rams were going to try to run Akers a lot. So I don't know. They put him out there for those 3 snaps if they saw something they didn't like, or if they just thought they liked how things were rolling with other guys. And then once we got in the second half, then the Rams had to pass more, so that might help explain it after that. But I don't know. I thought the guy would play. I was thinking after 12 the first week, I was thinking 15 to 18 maybe against the Rams, and it very much went the other way. So I don't know what their plan will be for Sunday.
It's a good question, Smumster. Thank you so much for your question. We appreciate it. Luke over on Facebook wants to know if tackle Jared Valliere is off the COVID-19 reserve list and available for Sunday. Valliere has officially been on COVID-19 reserve for a week. He has to be on that list if he is symptomatic for 10 days, and within those 10 days, he also needs to have not been symptomatic for 72 hours, which would, at the very earliest, make him available Saturday, I believe, if my math is correct. Pete, how likely is it that even if Valliere is able to get off COVID-19 reserve, that the Packers would want to play him on Sunday?
I guess I could see maybe he's active because they feel like he knows the offense, and if in a pinch, they'd rather have him at tackle than somebody else because their depth has taken the hit with the injury to Bakhtiari. But I can't. He hasn't. They can't stick him out there in the starting lineup. He hasn't practiced with them, or only practiced one day last week, maybe it was. So maybe they activate him as a backup. I don't know.
It's a good question, Luke, but keep that in mind. 10 days. Plus, that would be the minimum for Valliere. So we'll see if he is activated off of COVID-19 reserve in advance of this weekend's game. Thanks for your question. Let's take a question here from Curtis over on Facebook. Curtis wants to know if Packers fans can expect a fierce pass rush. That's the only way to attack Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady. The Packers can stop their run, but the Packers need to get after Brady this weekend. The Packers pass rush had a really successful day this past weekend against Rams quarterback Jared Goff. They were able to sack Goff 4 times, which is the most Goff has been sacked at all this season. How likely is it that they can replicate that performance this upcoming weekend against Tom Brady and the Bucs offensive line?
Well, you don't have to worry at all about this guy running, so you don't have to be you got to be somewhat pass rush lane conscious no matter what, but it ain't like playing Russell Wilson where that's your whole thing. So they can go after him with some abandon. And I think, you really want to just move him off his spot. He's thrown some interceptions this year and some interceptable balls more than he has in the past. So I would think the pressure will be a huge part of it. I don't know how much they'll blitz and how much they'll try to just do it with their 4. But getting that guy to move off his spot, I would think that's a huge part of the defensive plan.
Absolutely. Big key to this game. Thank you so much, Curtis, for your question. Let's go over to Eddie on Facebook. Eddie wants to know, Pete, give away as much as you possibly can, but how did your presentation of Leroy Butler's Hall of Fame credentials go at the Hall of Fame meeting? Was the reaction positive? The Hall of Fame Twitter account shared a short snippet of your presentation over on Twitter. I highly suggest that, folks, if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. Pete put together a pretty compelling case for Packers safety Leroy Butler, as he is a candidate to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year. Pete, how did that presentation go?
I thought it went well. The reaction was good. Last year, so you give the presentation, then you discuss the player. The floor is open to all the voters. Anyone can say anything they want, good or bad, about the guy, why they think he should be in, why they think he shouldn't. And last year, Leroy's discussion was the shortest one. And this year, he was right in the middle. The discussion was longer. It was more robust. He had the discussion last year, the people who talked supported him, but it was short. This year, same thing, except that there were a lot more people chiming in about thinking that he's a Hall of Famer and comparing him with Polamalu and Atwater and Lynch, who was also on the ballot. The discussion about how few safeties have gotten in and that they feel like that's getting rectified in the last few years with the safeties. Dawkins went in 3 years ago. Polamalu and Atwater last year. You got to think one of the two safeties is going to go in this year, Butler or Lynch. So they feel like they're addressing that. I think I got the sense the committee thinks that all these guys that we're talking about their cases are really pretty similar. So, one or two win, pretty good chance all in. It's just, you got to remember that these other players also have really compelling arguments. I think Alan Faneca, Butler, one of the things going for him, four first team All Pros. Alan Faneca has 6, and he was also first team all decade. And in a 7-year stretch, the 1 year where Faneca wasn't first team, it's because they had to move him to tackle because they had an injury. So, the guy making the guy making his case obviously has a really strong argument. It's like that with all these guys. All these guys have good, solid cases. Look how long Lynch has waited. This is 8 years Lynch has been through it. Faneca was in his 6th, I think. Tony Baselli, this is his 5th time as a finalist. So it just, they only 5 get in. So if you look at the list of 15 and you see, hey, I think 11 of those guys are Hall of Famers, well, only 5 are getting in. So then everybody gets pushed back. And then you had a couple of guys like this year where you had Manning and Woodson and Calvin Johnson. That's 2 or probably even 3 guys who are really likely going to make it in that first ballot. So everybody else gets pushed down the road another year. So it doesn't happen as fast as these guys, you might like and the players would like, but that's the rules. And I thought it went well. The discussion was interesting and it was involved, and you can tell people are really looking hard into his case now. And so I think things look good for Leroy, whether he gets in this year or not.
Hey, that's a lot of tough competition. When will Packers fans, or all fans, the public, find out who the inductees are this year?
Well, they're trying to hold. So usually the vote in the meeting is the day before the Super Bowl. And like 2 hours after we adjourn, they announce the class at the NFL Honors Dinner or the NFL Honors Show and show it on the NFL Network. Well, this year, because of COVID, they can't have all the players in the Super Bowl city at hotels and all that. So we had the vote 2.5 weeks early. So they're good. They still want to announce it at the Honors Dinner or at the Honors Show. But I don't know how they're going to keep it under wraps. They haven't informed the players yet, but over the next 2 weeks, they're going to. And I just find it hard to believe that guys, especially guys getting in, even guys who aren't going to tell somebody who isn't going to tell somebody else who it's not going to end up on Twitter. So, good luck, Hall of Fame, for keeping this under wraps, but they're trying. We don't even know who the 5 finalists were. They set up the vote so that we wouldn't know who the 5 finalists were, because the 5 finalists make it in every year they make it in. So if you knew the 5 finalists, you pretty much know who's going to be in the class. So they set it up so we wouldn't even know that, so we couldn't leak who the 5 finalists were.
I can't wait to find out. We'll see if it ends up getting leaked. Hopefully, for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's sake, they're able to keep it under wraps. We'll find out. Thanks so much, Eddie, for your question. We appreciate you joining us today. Let's go over to Jason on Facebook. Jason wants to know if the offensive line can do anything different to slow down the Buccaneers' pass rush this time around, this upcoming weekend. If you look back to that Week 6 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the pass rush, was unbelievable. It was the best pass rush that the Packers offense had faced all season, and it truly was one of the best that they faced all season to date. The Bucs were able to take down Aaron Rodgers 4 times, and I can't do the mental math here quick enough, but you look across the board, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13 quarterback hits on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. How can the offensive line be better this time around, especially considering the fact that they'll be without left tackle David Bakhtiari?
Yeah, you can bet a lot of money that they're spending a lot of time in meetings and on the practice field working on blitz pickups and all the different combos that the Bucs have shown this year. So that's a big part of it, is just identifying the blitzes and picking out better than they did. And, I wondered if the inside linebackers, and especially Devin White, with their suddenness, those are two of the most explosive inside linebackers in the game. Maybe their suddenness was an issue for the Packers. It's an issue for everybody. So when they blitz, so maybe that's something that they just got to speed up a little bit. But more than anything, they've just got to be really sound on their blitz identification, blitz pickup, and throwing the hot read when they need to, and making the Bucs pay for blitzing.
Thank you, Jason, for your question. Let's take one here from Josh on Facebook. Josh wants to know, with Aaron Jones turning down the recent contract offer, will the Packers let him walk? What is our thoughts on the contract process? ESPN reported earlier this week that Jones turned down a contract offer that would have made him within the 5 top highest paid running backs in the league. However, that would only be from an annual average value standpoint. The guaranteed money was not there, and Jones declined. What exactly is the status of those contract negotiations and Jones' future in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any more about the status of the talks other than they've been having them, and I'm sure they had a lot after he switched agents, and I'm sure it comes down to the guaranteed money. I mean, the average, they can make that up. They can make that whatever they want and make it really high, but, especially with running backs and how suddenly their careers can decline or end, it's the guaranteed money that means everything. And so the Packers are probably holding a pretty tight line on the guaranteed money compared to the deals that Cook and Kamara got, and Derrick Henry. And, those guys were in the 20 millions guaranteed. Who knows what the Packers are offering, but, I was kind of just doing my back of the envelope stuff when I was working on, deciding what they should pay him. I was thinking, because he's not a full-time player, he's a 60% player. His injury history, you don't want him out there any more than that. I was thinking he should be in the upper teens for guaranteed money, so I wonder if the Packers are lower than that. So the Packers do have the franchise tag, and I'm thinking that that's one of the reasons why they're holding their ground on the guaranteed money, because they've got that in their back pocket. And I'm thinking they're going to use it on them. I know if I were them, I would use it on them. Now, that could create its own issues down the road, but I think you deal with those as they come, and you put the tag on him. I mean, this guy's just such a good player. He makes so many plays. He makes their offense so much better. I think if you took him or Adams off that offense, this team's not the same. And so I'm thinking they're going to put the tag on him. I could be all wet, and I don't know what you think, but if I were them, I would tag him.
The Packers do not often use the franchise tag. However, next season is going to be a very different season. The salary cap is going to be a lot lower than anticipated going into the 2020 season because of the lack of revenue that was impacted by COVID-19 this season. So we'll keep an eye on that over on PackersNews.com. Make sure you're checking everything out. Thank you so much, Josh, for a great question as always. And thank all of you very much for joining us tonight. If we did not get to your question tonight, do not worry. We will be back later in the week, every day, Thursday and Friday, to continue to have this conversation and preview, look ahead to this weekend's game against the Buccaneers. For Pete Dougherty, I am Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.